Well, this past week, I had the opportunity to go and act like I was a chef, is what I'm saying. I got to go and be a helper for an organization that has become a pretty important part of my life over these past about 5 years. And so I was able to go and cook for a group of about 30 young men between 20 and 35 that are just trying to make sure that they can finish their lives well. And so I got to go play chef. I got to go and dice onions and peppers and cook for these guys. One of the tasks that I was given was above my pay grade. I'll just be honest with you, okay? I was tasked by the head chef to make some peanut butter silk pies. Never done that before, but he sat there across the table and he told me, you whip this and you put this and you mix this and then you pour it on this and chill this and then voila, you'll have peanut butter silk pies. Well, somewhere along the way, things went awry, is what we're going to say. And so I'm in there, I'm doing it exactly the way he told me to. And he walks in, and as you know, a chef will do, he just with one glance immediately knows things are off, okay? He looks across the table and he's like, what's going on with those? And I'm like, what's going on with those is me doing exactly what you told me to do and them turning out terribly. That's what's going on. It was this soupy, nasty mess. It did not set up the way that it was supposed to. I did my very best to convince him that it would be better if we threw them all in the garbage. And he said, we have no backup plan for dessert. We will be serving it. And so as I served it, as any good chef would do, I just said, please enjoy this deconstructed peanut butter silk pie. It was nasty. Everybody loved how it tasted. It looked like an absolute disaster, and it was terrible. But in this moment, I can remember him saying, what's going on with that? And immediately my first reaction was, this is your fault. What do you mean what's going on over here? What's going on over here is you have no idea what you're doing. We like to blame in that moment, and our defensive walls go up, and it's like, it wasn't me, it was you, and this is why, all of these reasons. And I got defensive, and I tried to convince him that it was all on him instead of on me. And the thing is I don't think I'm the only one who has felt that this week, or maybe this day. Anybody have that on the way to church this morning? Anybody have a helpful driver helper on the way to church this morning? Oh, I have a hand going up. I don't know what's going on over here. Yeah, he doesn't want to have lunch today, so it's okay. But honestly, in our lives, in our relationships, so oftentimes defensiveness can escalate. Defensiveness can grow, and it can begin to swell, and it can begin to create larger and larger problems, more and more trouble in our lives. And really this idea of continuing the cycle and spiraling into more and more trouble is really the premise of our series. We are continuing on with our current message series called Canary in a Coal Mine, where we are looking at what used to be a lifeline, but now has become a metaphor and a phrase that there is something deeper going on, a greater problem going on. You see, in the late 1800s and up until about 1986, canaries in a coal mine were not just something that you talked about, but they were an actual canary in an actual coal mine. You can see an example of that right here in this picture in the bottom right-hand corner, because canaries, through a bunch of research, were shown that if there were invisible and deadly gases present in a mine, that a canary, due to its high respiratory rate and high metabolic rate, would show signs of distress before there would be any danger to human beings. And so they would know that when they came down with a canary in the coal mine, if carbon monoxide was present, which is an invisible and deadly gas for human beings, that when the canary stopped singing or showed signs of distress, that it was time to not walk, not jog, but run for the entrance to the mine to get to safety. You see, the canary was the very first sign when it stopped singing that there was something else going on, a larger problem present. And throughout this series, we've been looking at a few things that are canaries in the coal mine that is our life. Things that can be indicators of an invisible danger. That's really our working definition. A canary in a coal mine is an early warning sign of an invisible danger. We've looked at things like anger and like hiding, but today we're going to continue on looking at the canary in the coal mine of defensiveness. That defensiveness can oftentimes be a sign that something larger is going on, that there is an invisible danger that is surrounding us that maybe we can't see at this point. You see, defensiveness, it looks a whole bunch of different ways. Some stuff is kind of funny and ridiculous, but it can get more serious when we get defensive. It can be as simple as saying that the Vikings stink, or the Packers are the worst team in the NFL. Seems to be my opinion. I don't know. Anybody have a different opinion? Anybody feeling defensive right now? It can be as easy as someone saying why that they believe that the solution to our country is to vote for Harris or to vote for Trump. Now I'm stepping on some toes. Comment on our driving. Comment on our cooking. Criticize how we loaded the dishwasher or how we folded the towels. About how we're always late or how all John Mayer songs sound exactly the same. We can even get defensive when someone criticizes a show that we love, that Star Wars is a terrible show, and why would you watch Star Trek? What a waste of time. Or are you kidding me? Friends is such a dumb show. Or The Big Bang Theory, why would you ever watch that? Or are you kidding me? You watch Fox News or CNN? Are we doing okay, everybody? I'm an equal opportunity offender. But can you feel it inside of you? Can you feel the natural tendency and desire to defend why you vote or why you watch or why you do the things that you do? It's easy to step into that sort of lifestyle. And defensiveness, it shows up in so many ways. But the question really for us today is why? Why does defensiveness show up? For some of us, it comes from pride or ego. We've puffed ourselves up enough to believe that our opinion and our decisions are untouchable. That we've got things all figured out. Like, who could possibly have the right to question my perfect logic? I have figured it out. I have looked at all of these things, and I have got it figured out. Who has the right to criticize or call me out on anything? Let me just tell you all the reasons you are wrong if you want to call me out. For others of us, the pendulum swings to the other end of the spectrum, and it doesn't come from an inflated ego or pride. It actually comes from a place of insecurity, a place of fear. You see, we're unsure of ourselves. Even the smallest amount of feedback feels crushing, and so we get defensive just to survive. For others of us, it comes from pain and trauma and fear. And we've been so hurt in the past that everything feels like a personal attack, and so we get defensive just to not get hurt again. And then there's others of us who just have control issues, who are just not interested in anybody else's opinion. And we see every question as a challenge to our authority and to our intelligence. And the truth is that it's so easy to spot defensiveness in everybody else, isn't it? Like, whoa, why are you getting all defensive, buddy? Calm down. I'll just let you know, in a little secret, nobody's ever calmed down after being told to calm down. Ever. Never has happened in the history. It always leads to more and more defensiveness. The thing is that we struggle to see it in here, don't we? Oh, I'm just telling them why. Oh, I'm just explaining my side of the story. I'm just giving my opinion. We like to downplay it. No, we are defending our side. But where does defensiveness come from for you? Does it come from pride and ego? Does it come from fear or pain or control? For me, it comes from insecurity. Anytime somebody questions my intelligence, anytime that I feel stupid, that's the quickest way to see me get defensive. Because it speaks into a place that I feel insecure, that I feel unworthy. And so when you question my intelligence, I feel like I have to defend that I am smart enough to be saying the things that I'm saying. And I get defensive. But defensiveness is not just a bad habit, it's a warning sign. It's a canary in the coal mine of your life, if you will. And it's alerting us of an invisible danger that is closing in around us. A deadly danger closing in. But what does the Bible have to say about this? Well, there's a guy named Solomon who wrote the book of Proverbs. He is labeled as the wisest man to ever live. These past couple of weeks, we've looked at a guy named King David, who is pretty famous, and he had a son, and his name was Solomon, who we hear from here. That is just like a power family. I tell you what, King David, and then to go to the wisest man to ever live in Solomon is a gift from God, and this is what he observed. In Proverbs, he wrote this: "Do you see a person wise in their own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for them." Seems pretty clear. Anybody know anybody like that? No pointing fingers, no raising hands. Do you see a person wise in their own eyes? What happens? There is more hope for a fool than for them. There's more hope for the foolish than someone who gets defensive, someone who is untouchable, someone who is impenetrable in their opinions. You see, when we get defensive, what Solomon is saying is that we are better off being a fool. There is more hope for us being a fool than being defensive. Why? Because when we are defensive, we're more focused on ourselves. We're more focused on being right, on saving face, on looking good in front of others, showing our worth and our value to other people. We are more invested in protecting our image than we are in growing and learning and facing reality. You see, we care more about defending ourselves than seeking true wisdom. And friends, I'm just going to say it, in this moment, the canary has stopped singing. Whenever we get defensive, the canary in our lives has stopped singing. And here's the deal. Nobody likes to be around somebody who knows they're always right. Does anybody have somebody like that in their life? This person who knows everything, has everything figured out, knows all the answers to everything that has ever been written. Someone who's always defensive, can't take any sort of question, any sort of feedback, any sort of anything that would criticize. You see, there's a problem brewing. And when we get defensive, it causes fractures in our relationships. And it drives us away from one another, but it also drives us away from Jesus. I hear this story time and time again, this same exact narrative. Something doesn't go the way that we expected it to go, the way we think that God should be acting, the things that God should be doing. And it creates this gap because it's like, I've got it figured out, God. Are you even paying attention? I'm doing my part. Why aren't you doing your part and doing what I am asking you to do? And we get defensive and we begin to draw back away from the goodness and the love and the mercy of God. See, oftentimes we can believe that we know better than the creator of the universe, that we know better than what God says about us. In Scripture, in the New Testament, there's one of Jesus' closest followers, a guy named Matthew, wrote a book by his own name, laying down the story of Jesus' life. You see, Matthew has been walking with Jesus for 3 years. He's seen him feed 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. He's seen him walk on water. He's seen him heal the blind and heal the lame and raise the dead back to life. He has seen all of these miracles and he's heard his teachings. And he shares a part of Jesus' story. And so we pick up this story right after the Last Supper, this last meal that Jesus has with his closest friends and family. This moment where we get communion, where we see Jesus breaking bread and giving it to them and giving them juice, the fruit of the vine, to them. And after the meal is over, Jesus goes with a couple of them off to pray as he knows what is coming, that Jesus is about to go to the cross. He's about to be killed. And this is what we see. Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this very night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." And Peter answered him, "Though all fall away because of you, I will not fall away." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said to him, Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. Notice the exclamation point. Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. Have you ever done this in your life where you just like stamp a line in the ground and you're like, I will not, no matter what, I refuse, no matter what comes my way, I will not do that. And then it finishes up by saying, and all the disciples said the same. Peter's just the front runner. He's just the one that gets called out by saying, I will not deny you. But then all the other disciples, they say, I won't deny you either, Jesus. And it's like, isn't this the picture of humanity? As defensive as Peter gets, like Jesus is perfect, like batting 1,000 on saying things that are true. Like everything he's ever said that was going to happen has happened. Everything that he has ever done has been perfect. And yet Peter's like, I think it's about time for the blemish on the record, Jesus. Not me. I know you're saying it with all this confidence, but not me. But why does Peter get defensive? You see, when you see the exclamation point and you hear the way that I said it, you might think Peter is really, really angry. Peter is really, really upset. What I would argue is that Jesus is the person that Peter loves most in the world, and Jesus is questioning Peter's authority. He's questioning his loyalty, and Peter is really, really hurt. Peter is sad at the fact that his Savior and his Lord would say to him, Peter, I want you to know that to your best efforts, you won't have what it takes to stick with me. You don't have what it takes to be loyal and to stay with me to the very end. He gets defensive because he's hurt. You see, church, defensiveness can oftentimes feel like self-preservation. Self-protection. But over time, we continue to protect and protect and protect, and eventually our ego grows and grows and grows until we have created an impenetrable fortress around us that no one could ever speak in or give any feedback, which means we could never grow or get smarter or wiser or love more deeper or care more fully. And slowly our pride, our overconfidence in our own abilities begins to take over. And just like Peter, we find ourselves feeling like we are always right, that we know what is best. We can even believe that we're smarter than God, which creates a gap, creates a distance. Other people feel like they can no longer connect with us because it's not worth it to give any feedback or give any help or give a different opinion. And it's not that they don't care. Honestly, it just gets to a place where you just feel overwhelmed and you know that you're going to be met with defensiveness, and so you just stop sharing and giving feedback altogether. It just hasn't worked in the past, so why would you continue to try? And this is where we find the invisible greater danger surrounding us when it comes to defensiveness. We let our own pride lead the way. If this is us, we need to understand and remind ourselves, like in the moment, when we are wanting to get defensive, we have to remember and admit you don't know everything. Now, I think all of us, to some level, we would never say this out loud, right? Like nobody's like, I know everything. Like, I know everything. I mean, maybe if you're 8 or 12 or 18 or 21 or 25. I don't know where the line is, but there's a line somewhere where you would stop saying that you know everything. But if we want to stop having this defensiveness, we have to not only remember, because it's one thing to remember that I don't know everything, but then there's this other part that seems to be really, really difficult because we remember, and then it's like our lips get sewn shut when we have to admit that we don't know everything. It's like, I cannot get the words out that I don't know everything. I cannot admit that I don't have it all figured out. We have to remember and admit that we don't know everything. The brilliant thing about this is that none of us have it figured out. We're in good company. And the only reason that we struggle to admit that we don't know everything is because of our pride. Is because of our ego. Is because we don't want to admit to ourselves or to other people that we don't have it all together. We can so easily get caught up in our own glory and our own opinion and begin to think that nobody has the right to question our authority or our intelligence. And all of that is just rooted in pride. It's rooted in believing that we are smarter than everyone else. We have to remember and admit that we don't know everything. If you tend to be a know-it-all, this one's free right here. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Remember, no one likes a know-it-all, including you, so stop being one. Nobody likes a know-it-all, including you and including me, so stop being one. I'll just tell you, it is so freeing to no longer have to keep up this facade that you've got it all together, that you know everything. You don't like being around other people who are know-it-alls, so we have to stop being know-it-alls ourselves. And I'll just say it. I just know that there's some people in this room that are like, yeah, but you have no idea the idiots that I spend time with. Right? I know all the thoughts. Friends, I'm not standing up here as somebody who's arrived, who somebody's like, I got this thing all figured out. Defensiveness? What's that? I feel it and I know it. We're all in this together. To understand that our defensiveness is our choice. When we are offended, when we choose to get defensive, it is not because of the intelligence of anyone else. It is all on us. It is our choice. You see, going back to the words of Solomon, when he writes in Proverbs, he says this about pride. Pride ends in humiliation, while humility brings honor. Pride brings defensiveness, and defensiveness inside of pride brings what? Humiliation. I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in signing up for a whole bunch of humiliation. It's not something that I enjoy doing. But when we walk away from the humiliation and we step into humility, what happens? It brings honor. Because being able to not get defensive when someone has commented about our driving, about our leadership, about our choices, about who we vote for, or what shows we watch, or the life that we live, when we can humble ourselves enough to remember and admit that we don't know it all, what does it bring? Honor. It brings honor and it brings glory, because that's what humility brings. What does pride bring? It brings humiliation. Disclaimer for all of us. I am not saying that everyone's feedback and criticism is right. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that our response, being defensive, is our responsibility. We have to be able to have a difference of opinion in a world that says that that is undoable. Friends, the gospel of Jesus continually says that even though we may disagree on some things, that we are still called to unity. Not uniformity, but unity. To be joined together with one another. To continue to live in compassion and community and love for one another, even though we may vote or watch different shows differently. We are still called to unity. We are not called to defensiveness. We are called to a freedom that is found in unity. And we are walking around oftentimes in our world believing that we all agree on everything. I'm just telling you, I don't agree with any of you in this room on everything. If that's surprising to you, I'm sorry. I don't agree with my wife on everything, every day, or every minute usually. She's usually right, but that's not a conversation for today. Defensiveness. It makes us lower than a fool. It makes us foolish, and it leads to humiliation. Going back to our friend Peter, who adamantly told Jesus, I will not deny you, no way. We are fly together, die together, bad boys for life, no matter what comes my way. I am with you, Jesus. I will not deny you. Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. Well, after they get done praying and having this conversation, Jesus is arrested, taken into custody, and put on trial for his life. And Peter experiences a fear he's never felt before in his life, and he feels afraid for his life. And in Matthew 26, we pick up his story in verse 69, and this is what it says. Now, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, right outside where Jesus is on trial. And a servant girl came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean," denial 1. But when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man," denial 2. After a little while, the bystander came up and said to Peter, "Certainly, you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. In just a few short hours, Peter had forgotten what Jesus had said was going to happen. And he finds himself denying Jesus 3 times, exactly the way that he had said that it would happen. And then the rooster crows and reality comes home, and he looks back on his defensiveness and realizes he didn't have it all figured out, and he had to admit that he didn't know everything. And his pride had led him towards humiliation in the face of people out in the courtyard, the bystanders. You see, when the Canary stops singing because of our defensiveness, 1, we need to remember and admit that we don't know everything. And then 2nd, don't take everything personally. We have to stop taking everything so personal. If I can get really, really honest, we are in election season. And I want you to know that somebody that doesn't vote like you is not the scum of the earth. We don't have to take it personally that someone would have the gall to vote for someone different than us, would do something different than us, would live their life in a different way. I truly want you to hear me. There is room at the table of the Lord, for all kinds of people, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter the color of your skin, no matter the denomination you worship, the person you vote for, no matter who you are. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you. All of you are welcome at my table." And when we get defensive and believe that we are the only ones who have the answer, we are walking as far away from the character of Christ that we can. There's something so powerful about being around someone who doesn't take everything personally, isn't it? Like, have you met this person who just seems to be like walking around life like they're Mary Poppins? Just like, spoonful of sugar, it's just wonderful. Everybody's different than me, but it's absolutely glorious. Like, just the weight of the world doesn't even affect them. It's no big deal, no problem. It's like, where's your anxiety? Where's your fear? Like, how come you aren't carrying around all of this weight and pain? And it's like they just don't take everything that the world says personally. But how do we do that? Friends, as followers of Jesus, we have an amazing reason to live differently and without defensiveness, to remember and admit that we don't know everything, and to stop taking everything that everyone else says personally. Because our identity in Christ is not defined by our actions, by others' opinions, by others' criticism, by what they say about us. It's not about who we vote for, how we drive, how we fold the laundry, how we do our dishes. It's not how we lead our businesses or our teams. No, as followers of Jesus, we don't have to be so easily offended and be defensive, because our identity is grounded in Jesus and what he says we are. About who he says that we are. When he says that you and I are his beloved, his handiwork, the prize, the apple of his eye, his sons and daughters, that our identity is rooted in that, not our voting record, not our actions, not our decisions, not our everyday decisions. It's not tied to your skills or your intellect or your talents. In him, our worth and our identity is constant and unshakable. Maybe you didn't hear me, because that's good news today. Our identity in Jesus is constant and unshakable in a world that is anything but that. In a world that is as far up and as far down as it could possibly get, our God says, your identity is secure in me, and it is constant and unshakable no matter what the world says, no matter what the world does. Your identity in me is constant and unshakable. This frees you and I to be the least offendable people on the planet. It gives us the freedom to walk peacefully and open-handedly, to hear the feedback of others, the feedback of God, the criticism and the different opinions open-handed, and to process them and to allow us to be sharpened and shaped to be further into the character of God. Because when I look at the example of Jesus, I don't see defensiveness. Anybody that should or could have been defensive was Jesus. He was mocked, and he was betrayed by all of his friends. All of the disciples walked away. All of them left him. All of them disowned him. He was questioned and scrutinized and beaten and ultimately killed by being a good person, by being perfect, by making good decisions. And yet he never once gets defensive. He doesn't take it personally. Why? Because he knows that his identity is constant and unshakable, because he is who God says that he is, not the things that these other people say. He had every right to lash out, to take revenge, to get really, really jaded and defensive. But instead, he remains calm. He listened to people. He spoke truth without being defensive. And then he humbly gives his life for the exact people who had been scrutinizing him, to give them a hope that would surpass all understanding, to give them a hope for a future that they couldn't yet see. Rather than getting caught up in being defensive and defending his standpoint, he loved, and he cared, and he extended empathy and compassion for the differences that they felt than what he felt. And the good news today is that every time we remember and admit that we don't know everything and we stop taking everything personally, we have the opportunity to listen to others and not just become aware of our defensiveness, but to become more and more like Jesus. When we put down our defensiveness, we put down our pride, and we receive humility, and the glory and the honor and the praise goes to God, and we become more and more like him. It's the calling of all of us as followers of Jesus, to be more and more like him. And I'll just say, defensiveness isn't worth it anytime. It always spirals into more and more pain and hurt, but being more and more like Jesus is worth it every single time. Let's pray. God, I thank you and I praise you today. I praise you for your example. I praise you that you are a God who meets us where we're at. And God, in the moment, that if we look back over our life, that our past is not held against us, that if we have been defensive in our past, that we are not defined by that, but God, we are still defined by who you say we are. And so God, I just pray that you'd give us the courage and the ability to step into who you say we are. God, that we would set down our defensiveness, that we would decide that we don't have to defend every opinion and thing that we do, that we could live life a little bit more freely, a little bit more openly, with our hands open a little bit more, release a little bit of control, consider that maybe we don't know everything and that there's something maybe we could learn from someone who is different than us. Jesus, give us the ability to humbly walk in your footsteps, to pursue you, to love others, to continue to grow, love, and pursue you, that we become more and more like you each day. Jesus, we love you and we praise you.